Today, many nations are fighting for survival, sovereignty, and peace, and the Sahel stands at the center of this struggle against imperial pressure. Burkina Faso just dragged Africa's so-called giants through the mud. Nigeria, drowning in oil wealth, still cannot escape the cycle of loans. Kenya, hailed as a tech hub, remains dependent on the World Bank to build. South Africa, rich in platinum, stays chained to foreign capital. Yet tiny Burkina Faso lined up 760 for heavy-duty machines funded entirely by its own hands, without donors, without charity, without foreign strings. It wasn't aid, it wasn't charity, it was sovereignty bulldozed into existence. And if that doesn't inspire the rest of Africa to fight, then what will? Let's get into it. Music in a continent where every new highway ribbon is wrapped in donor flags, where every bridge bears a plaid praising foreign partners, and where presidents smile beside World Bank officials like schoolboys receiving new toys, Burkina Faso has shattered the script. On a scorching afternoon in Ouagadougou, Captain Ibrahim Traoré unveiled 760 for heavy-duty road machines bulldozers, graders, compactors, excavators, all lined in perfect rows, gleaming under the Sahel sun. No foreign ambassador cut the ribbon. No IMF team lurked in the background. No European minister lectured about fiscal responsibility. This was a Burkinabe showcase, financed with Burkinabe wealth. It wasn't just an infrastructure milestone, it was a political earthquake. Africa's smaller nations are used to making headlines for disasters, coups, or crises, not for surpassing the continent's giants. Yet suddenly, a nation with fewer resources than Nigeria, fewer global ties than Kenya, and far less industrial clout than South Africa had delivered something they could not: development without depen. Densi, the shock was immediate. Analysts scrambled to explain it. Some dismissed the move as symbolic. Others whispered the machines would soon break down. But beneath the excuses, the truth gnawed at them. Burkina Faso had achieved what bigger economies had failed to do. Development had been proven possible without foreign aid, and that reality stung, because it not only revealed Burkina Faso's courage, but also everyone else's cowardice. The power of this announcement lay not just in the number of machines, but in what they represented. It was a message cast in steel, echoing far beyond Ouagadougou. These machines will soon carve roads across dusty landscapes and connect forgotten towns. But even before breaking ground, they have already reshaped Africa's political imagination. They reminded the continent that aid dependency is not destiny, it is a choice. And that is why this moment struck a nerve. It wasn't just a Burkinabe victory, it was a continental humiliation. Every African watching understood what it meant. Colonial history and Western domination cannot be the eternal excuse. Dependency endures only because some leaders still choose it. Burkina Faso has proven there is another path. What makes this sting even more is how Traoré framed the announcement: without apologies, without self-congratulation, without begging for Western validation. The machines simply appeared, lined up as living proof that the state could deliver. It was quiet defiance, and in that silence lay its power. In the absence of donor speeches, the machines themselves spoke. Africa can build Africa. That is why the announcement reverberates far beyond infrastructure. It is not just about roads, it is about pride. It is not just about machines, it is about the restoration of dignity. Burkina Faso's delivery of 760 for heavy-duty machines unsettled elites in Nairobi, Abuja, and Pretoria more than it unsettled Washington or Paris. Because it exposed a dangerous truth: their own people will soon start asking why a sanctioned, landlocked nation can achieve this while they cannot. And so the question lingers, haunting every African leader still tethered to donor conferences and IMF loans. If Burkina Faso can stand on its own, what excuse do you have? Let's be blunt. In most of Africa, machinery of this scale arrives stamped with foreign insignia, donated by the European Union, financed by the World Bank, or a gift from China. Every blade, every tire, carries the reminder that African roads are not built on African terms. Infrastructure is too often paraded as charity rather than sovereignty. Citizens clap, not because their governments delivered, but because their governments begged successfully. That humiliation has been normalized for decades. But look now at Ouagadougou rows of machines gleaming under the sun with no donor's flag, no external logos, no politician muttering words of gratitude to some foreign patron. Just Burkinabe machines bought with Burkinabe money. That silence is deafening. The absence of donor symbolism is the loudest message Africa has heard in years. These machines are declarations: we can build without you. And make no mistake, every leader on the continent saw those images and felt the sting. In Abuja, Nairobi, and Pretoria, elites are scrambling for excuses. They'll say Burkina Faso is too small to matter. They'll say it's a stunt. But what they cannot deny is the raw truth. If Burkina Faso can line up 760 for machines without donors, then dependency is no longer destiny, it's a choice. That is why these machines are more dangerous to the old order than any protest or fiery speech. Because unlike words, they cannot be dismissed as rhetoric. They stand as immovable proof that sovereignty can be built with courage. They embody what no IMF report, no donor conference, no think tank analysis can erase. Africa can provide for itself if leaders dare to reclaim resources. But let's also be clear about the psychological warfare at play. For decades, Western donors perfected the art of infantilizing African states. They deliver a few buses, cut ribbons on small hospitals, or launch food aid programs and expect governments to perform gratitude like circus acts. Burkina Faso just flipped that script. The government didn't bow. It didn't think. It stood in silence because there was no foreign master to thank. The machines themselves were the speech. And that silence traveled across Mali, where citizens asked why a dependency still chains them. Across Niger, where uranium wealth has long served Paris instead of Niamey. Even into Johannesburg, where the so-called industrial giant of Africa now looks hollow compared to the audacity of a Sahelian nation under sanctions. Each machine is a mirror held up to the rest of the continent, forcing Africans to ask, what excuse do our leaders have now? Critics will ask, where did the money come from? Burkina Faso doesn't have vast reserves, and that's precisely the point. These machines are not just tools of construction, they are breadcrumbs leading back to the source of real sovereignty. Behind them lies the radical decision that made this possible, seizing control of Burkina Faso's wealth at its roots. That wealth was never in donor pledges or foreign loans, it was buried underground, gleaming in veins of gold that for decades enriched Europe while Burkina Faso remained poor. The story here is not just about machines arriving, but about the radical shift in where the money came from. If the machines were the evidence, then gold was the motive. Because let's be clear, 760 for machines don't fall from the sky. They are bought, paid for, and delivered. And in Burkina Faso, the money trail doesn't run to donor accounts in Brussels or IMF vaults in Washington. It runs deep into the mines, straight to the gold fields that foreign corporations looted for generations. For years, while Burkinabe citizens were told to tighten their belts, their nation exported wealth by the ton. The paradox was cruel. One of Africa's top gold producers, yet its people drowned in poverty. Western companies, propped up by local elites, treated the mines like private vaults, or left the country by the truckload, refined abroad, sold on global markets. The state received scraps and tax is barely enough to cover bureaucrats' salaries. Meanwhile, citizens were told to wait for a development that never arrived. Donors filled the gap, congratulating themselves for supporting a nation that bled gold every single day. Then came Ibrahim Traoré. With a stroke of policy, he upended the entire system. Strategic mines were placed under national control. Contracts that siphoned profits overseas were suspended. Foreign operators were told the game had changed. For the first time since independence, Burkinabe gold would finance Burkinabe development. Suddenly, the impossible became reality. The treasury swelled with money, not borrowed money, not aid money, but sovereign money. Money that answered to no one but the Burkinabe people. And that is why these machines matter. They are not gifts, they are not charity, they are monuments to a new era where a nation dared to fund its future with its own hands.